following is a presentation of Main Street Media, your source for news, sports, and information on Main Street in Middle Tennessee.
Hello and welcome into Main Street Preps this week. I'm Russell Vannozzi, joined by Tyler Palmateer, and we are back in studio today with a little bit of a different show, Tyler, after the news that came down last week that the TSSAA, under certain parameters, is permitting name, image, and likeness payments. So we are going to delve into that, and we're going to bring on Blackman football coach Chandler Tiger to help us do that. We're also going to dive into some basketball storylines and touch on that since basketball is now in full swing. And eventually our show will transition into more of a basketball show, but we're not there just yet. We wanted to address this news and everything that kind of surrounds that. So Tyler, you ready to get going?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody that this podcast is sponsored by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Fans don't let fans drive drunk. All right, let's bring in Blackman football coach Chandler Tiger now. Chandler, we appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, guys, appreciate y'all having me.
So last week, Chandler, the TSSAA came down with the big ruling there that they're going to allow NIL payments now under certain situations to high school athletes. What was your kind of initial reaction when that news came across?
I guess the first part was we were surprised that we knew it was going to be probably passed for about a month. We knew that they were going to vote on it. I was surprised that it was a unanimous vote to approve it, and then it was able to start immediately. That was also surprising, as opposed to saying, hey, it's going to be approved, but here's going to be the rules and regulations. It was pretty generalized. I know why the state did it. They were fear of litigation. We're now the 20th state to pass NIL for high school players, so they were afraid of that. But just for it to be ready, set, go, and here's no. They've got the general rules, but there's no specifics, which we can get into as to what you can and cannot do. That's surprising, at least.
Chandler, this is Tyler. Could the schools have used a little heads up in this situation? Chandler, can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you guys have liked some heads up just with a chance to plan?
Well, I mean, most of us that kind of have followed this over the course of years, we knew it was going to come down. We knew it was going to be voted on, and we've known for about a month. The surprising part was there was no real detail to the policy. So they passed NIL. Basically, they say that kids are allowed to the kids that make shirt company, for example, we had a regular student in sports who had one of those last year, and the students would buy sweatshirts and wear them around school. And a player, basketball player, softball, you wouldn't be able to do that in some school, or it would be a violation of the amateurism policy that TSSAA had. Centered around and started, but at the same time, when it comes out, they don't necessarily go into all the details and what you can and cannot do, especially when it comes to social media, where the majority.
Sounds like we may have lost Chandler there, but it's that he's bringing up an interesting point while we try to get him back on the phone. Oh, we got you back now, Chandler. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yeah, you're sounding a little better now.
Okay.
So Chandler, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but as far as who this affects, it seems like on the just kind of on the outside looking in that the star recruits with large social media followings stand to benefit the most. But I know you've coached in a lot of different environments, a lot of different size schools and different markets. What about maybe the local star in a small town environment? How might he or she benefit from this rule, and maybe even if it's in a smaller way than some of the big names might?
Yeah, I mean, I got some calls actually that night because, the day it was approved, 7 or 8 of our kids already had deals and were ready to go and all that. So I got some calls from even like a single A school and, what can we do to benefit? And I think it's just good to partner, with your businesses in your community. It might even, you could argue it could be better in a small community to where you've got closer relationships and you've got one big business there in town. They partner with the star quarterback, and we played a school earlier this year where the quarterback was on a car commercial, and that was, he didn't get paid or anything, but it was just, now you can pay that kid a little bit to do that, and I think in small communities actually it's going to be really neat.
Since you've seen about 7 or 8, you said on day one, which an NIL specialist from a company called Open Doors said that's the most they had seen at the high school level on the first day that it was passed, which is kind of interesting, Chandler. But
from us?
Well, not just from you, but I think the whole state. If you guys had 7 or 8, I bet there must have been maybe closer to a dozen on day one in Tennessee, or double digits, close to something like that. But question being, since you've seen a couple of these, how much like annual income do you foresee for, say, a year's worth of an NIL deal for a player? I mean, are you able to help put a number of that to people as to maybe how much this is, or how much or how little this is going to be worth to them?
I think the majority of the deals, guys, are going to be very small. And this is the hard part, is I'm not even sure, because I'm a school employee, what I'm allowed to even know or discuss. And, I'm not supposed to be a part of any of those conversations, and we're not. So all seven, 8 of those were taking place outside of us. So, technically we don't even are supposed to find out what they're making. I put a letter of the law. But just from, overhearing stuff, I think it's going to be small for the most part. But what they've also done is open the door for major deals to be done by businesses, and then their tax write-offs for those businesses to then try to affect their local football program. So you can see some major things go down legally now, that as opposed to where some of those things might have gone down in the past in other states and other places illegally. Now they're legal. But the majority of them, if it's done the right way for the intent of the rule, is going to be small. And it's like for that kid that I mentioned that had his sweatshirt business, or a kid that gives private lessons or tutoring. One of our players could go out and give, he's signing a Power 5 scholarship, so he could go out and have a little kids camp, with 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and actually, profit a little bit off of that camp. It's not going to be major dollars, I don't think, but that doesn't close the door on major dollar deals to be done.
Chandler, you mentioned you were surprised on just how quickly some of these NIL offers started coming out. I think Tyler and I we're going to discuss that in a few minutes, and we were pretty surprised too, just on the speed. But clearly, that shows that there was a market here for this. There was some pent up interest in different businesses partnering with athletes. I mean, is that something that you think has maybe been something that's been on the minds of businesses for a while, wanting this kind of local partnership? And
it's a couple things, probably. I mean, you see, first of all these businesses that came out originally and wanted to be the first ones, they knew it was going to get picked up and talked about. And so, the night it's passed, you see, the first NIL deal in state of Tennessee history, and it gets retweeted and put all over the social media. And so, that kind of part of it, when they initially hit, everybody wanted to be first. And then the second part is, I do think there is some market, and I do think, football and the interest is only growing, and it's a trickle down effect from colleges, whether that's, coaches' salaries or how fast coaches are released. And, in the state of Georgia, I think 10 to 15 coaches were fired the Monday after they didn't make the playoffs. And you're starting to see all that trickle down stuff from college, and of course it's coming to high school. But we should have seen this coming for years with the travel baseball leagues and 7-on-7 competitions and the dollars that are being. It's getting crazier and crazier, and it's starting younger and younger.
Yeah, and some people are going to say, Chandler, that this is going to ramp up the recruitment and the enticement of transfers in high school when that's already so prevalent. Are there potential problems there?
I would argue that that's already happening, not because of NIL. And the same teams will benefit off of getting triggers of the NIL deals and make some things perfectly legal that otherwise wouldn't have been. But at the same time, I would argue, look at college football. The same top 5 recruiting programs, your Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, they were the top 5 in recruiting before NIL was passed, and they're still top 5 in recruiting after NIL was passed. So I do think 6 months from now, a lot of the stuff will die down, and it'll just go back to the same teams that have been dominant will continue to be dominant. And you might have 1 or 2 that can use this as a way to bolster their program, especially with the businesses there in town, or a new business moving in, might be able to do so. But I don't think it's going to be the grand, high school football as we know it is over that some people are arguing.
Chandler, we're going to switch gears on you for these last couple of questions, if that's all right. And obviously yesterday, the passing of Mississippi State coach Mike Leach, that was felt in basically all corners of the football world. And I know you run an up-tempo, no huddle spread offense that really has a lot of the same goals of the air raid, to wear the defense down, to run as many snaps as possible. I'm curious, did you derive any of the concepts or anything that you do now from the air raid offense?
Yeah, it's curious you asked me that. So honestly, Mike Leach has a lot to do with why I'm in coaching football. My old family members, when I told them I wanted to be a football coach for a profession, they told me, hey, you never played college football. That's going to be unlikely for you. And Mike Leach was one of the stories in the books and all the stuff. As another guy who never played college football at a high level that became a high level football coach for a job. So a lot of that had to do with me getting into coaching and encouraging me to do so. I was fortunate to meet him a couple times, in my career. And then we've taken a lot of the offense from the air raid, our 4-vert concept, or white cross, all of our drop back progressions. I mean, it's pure air raid from day one. A lot of the spacing stuff we do in formations and splits, and it's how much that man has meant to all of college football is actually, it's crazy. And it takes someone to pass away early for everyone to come out of the woodwork and kind of explain, hey, I've only met this person twice, but here's the effect on me. I'm not sure if I would even be coaching if I didn't have somebody like that kind of went through a different path, and they're not afraid to be themselves. And, we've definitely, you guys know, we've done things very different here at Blackman, and I'm very different from a lot of the coaches that are around in high school football. And it takes somebody like that's so successful that's not afraid to do that. It kind of sets the example for the rest of us. For him to pass, it's unfortunate. And then at the same time, we got Justin Brown, who's committed to Mississippi State, and the nature of that business. I've been there. It can change the story. That's unfortunate. So we're hoping everything works out, including their coaches and coaches' families. You've got guys down there that were extremely close with Coach Leach, and now even their job employment is kind of up in the air until everything gets settled.
Yeah, there's so many angles of the impact that really stretches all the way down to high school, Russell, because of what he just mentioned. There's guys right here in our area that were part of that recruiting class. And then you think about just I think we all knew Mike Leach was unique and dynamic and just a gem, but I don't know that we all appreciated maybe how big his life was until this happens, which is an unfortunate kind of just part of life that we don't get that context until later. Switching back to your guys' team, Chandler, how much this last season really was a culmination of things, that the offensive system working and having the guys in it that were fit for it, between Reisner, Justin Brown, and Marshall. How much fun was that, just to see it all kind of reach a point where it was all working and it was very successful and had you guys win games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had a blast. Last year was one of the most fun seasons in coaching I've ever had. Same for our staff. But honestly, the year before, I mean, we went 5-5 and kind of set the foundation for what we're going to do, and we still had a blast. So we said, going into this year, win or lose, how we do, we're going to have more fun than anybody in the state. And I think we accomplished that and did a lot of good things. I think we finally hit 27 school records in 2 years. And, to be able to do so many things statistically and two Mr. Football finalists for the first time or semifinalists for the first time in school history. And, Justin to be there for the Mr. Football Awards and, all these kids signing scholarships and accolades. And, hopefully, our assistant coaches are now getting, recommendations for head coaching jobs and coordinator jobs. It's kind of neat just to see everything that we believed in that was so different from the previous staff and really everyone else around here, that you can have success having a lot of fun and doing things differently and being yourself. And it's culture wise is totally different. But everybody seeing this success on the field, it does give some legitimacy to what you're doing, and it's not all just flash and hype and social media and Twitter. There's actual substance behind what you're doing, and you're affecting these kids, and even the ones that don't go to college football. They're prepared, for college or for whatever job they want to do out of high school, and hopefully they've learned a lot of lessons, that they've been here for the last 2 years with us.
Chandler, congratulations on that successful season, and we appreciate you joining us today to get into some NIL and Mike Leach and everything else that we talked about. So thanks again for being here, and we really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for all y'all do for covering us. I mean, you guys covered us a lot this year, and y'all do a tremendous job. So just keep it up, and it's very exciting, and all of our kids love reading all your articles and all that stuff each week.
Appreciate it, Chandler.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that has been Blackman football coach Chandler Tigard. Apologies there. I think, unfortunately, his connection was a little tough there at times, but I think we got the gist of what he was saying. A lot of good stuff there on NIL, Mike Leach, and his offense and everything. So we are going to take a quick break and then come back with some more NIL discussion after this.
It was just a few drinks. I'm good.
I thought it was good.
After every game, we always have a few. It's no big deal. It was no big deal.
Hey, I can hold my liquor. I thought I could hold my liquor.
As promised, we are back with some more NIL discussion. And Tyler, you were there when this all went down last week at the TWSAA Legislative Council meeting. Just kind of take people through maybe just a brief overview of what happened there and what has happened since, really.
Yeah, there was a pretty good discussion about it. I think they had all the feedback they kind of needed with the overwhelming support of administrators. They pulled the trigger pretty quick, which I think you can make arguments on both sides. One, a few guidelines would have been nice. Draw up a few and just be able to at least include those. There's some specifics which Chandler mentioned that people still don't know. But I think what this looks like is kind of like the things that have happened at the NCAA level where it's like NIL happens. There's a lot more transfer freedom. And for a hot minute there, it's the Wild West. I mean, everybody was so nervous in those first few months when these big changes happen at the NCAA level. For a minute, it is the Wild West. So it's, wow, big news here coming across the board. Thanks to our producer, Billy Derrick. What a get for the University of Tennessee football program. Arion Carter, the Smyrna linebacker slash just athlete, has committed to the Vols. So that's a big development. He just announced that live at Smyrna High School. So that's really big, Russell.
Yeah, who would have thought that a year and a half ago Tennessee would be taking prospects away from Alabama? I mean, Nick Saban was just wrote about it last week at the Mr. Football Awards. I mean, Nick Saban was just in Arion Carter's living room last week. I mean, that's pretty hard to turn down.
He turned down some good programs. I mean, that list was long. The best programs from the top conferences in the country. So a big get for Josh Heupel. But kind of going back to this, there weren't a whole lot of specifics or, they were very, I don't know, not loose parameters. There was like one or two. You just can't support your school on a t-shirt or name them or include them in the promotion of your stuff, which is actually pretty simple to follow. But like Chandler said, how much can you talk about it? How much are coaches allowed to talk about it with players? They don't know that yet. But I think there's sort of an umbrella for safety there. Those rules haven't been created yet. So how can you break a rule or an amendment that hasn't happened? And I think maybe the TSSAA's thought process here was, look, we're going to pass this. Let's let the Wild West period unfold. We're going to have a board of control meeting in literally a month in January to discuss what's going on. And then sort of by chance, there's going to be a special meeting that they're going to hold about the sanctioning of lacrosse on January 15th. So if they wanted to amend this rule at that time, I suppose they could. It's a special meeting that was called. I don't know all the specifics on whether or not you can make those decisions in a special meeting, but if you're having one, I would just think that you could. So what? We have a 1 month period where there's some uncertainty and there's rules that haven't been made that people could potentially break. A lot of questions are going to come out of this. Then all of a sudden in January, you're nipping that in the bud and you're just moving on something that was going to happen.
Yeah, and real high level here, Tyler. Let's talk maybe why this happened. Of course, like Chandler was talking about, really is a trickle down from the college level. Of course, last summer in 2021, there was the antitrust case that went to the Supreme Court, and the court sided with the athletes and said that, hey, the NCAA had violated antitrust laws in allowing, and not allowing athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And so, really, when you think about it, just at its basic level, anybody that's maybe doesn't understand this or it disagrees with it, at a basic level, our country was founded on free market principles. That's still how we operate. And so if high schools and college athletes can make money and we're stopping them from doing that, that is kind of anti-American when you think about it that way.
Yeah, and it just the precedent for litigation has already been set because of that, like you said. So they're automatic. All of a sudden, there's a big risk for the high school associations, which I think the NFHS finally said, look, they kind of 1 year, it might have been 2021. They came out very firmly against NIL. They don't want it in there. A year later, the tune completely changed. And I think the litigation part, the legality part is what changed them. And last thing here, I know we want to get to some quick basketball nuggets, but I think it's just important for equitable reasons. Kids should just be allowed to make money within moral boundaries without it being a crime, just like everybody else and everybody else in their school. For years, I mean, the big associations, they make money and pay people because of the athletes and the sports being played. Businesses make money off them. Like Chandler said, something I hadn't thought about. Little League, trainers are making money off these kids, taking money from them to train them. I'm not saying that's in every situation that's wrong. Certainly, I think some trainers are legit and some definitely aren't. But people are, even at the high school level, making money off youth and amateur athletics. So it's just only fair for them to get to do that. I've also kind of made the point that what's wrong with letting a kid run a small business about their specialty in high school? At the end of the day, it's an educational opportunity to get to do that. So that's kind of where I fall on it. Most of those are opinions for me, but I do think it's beneficial that they're going to get to revisit this quickly in a month at the Board of Control meeting to maybe address some issues.
Well, we'll see how that all shakes out. But for now, like you said, it's the Wild West, and there are NIL offers and announcements flying everywhere. So we'll kind of see and monitor that moving forward. But before we get out of here today, we're going to take one more quick break and then do a basketball check-in and let you know how some things are going on the hardwood.
It's just a few cocktails at happy hour.
It was just a few cocktails at happy hour.
You really good try.
There aren't any cops around. I didn't think there were any cops around.
I drink and drive all the time.
Sir, you've been in a serious crash. I need you to hang on, okay? Run your hands, sir. Where you are right now?
With all the football stuff that's been going on, we really haven't had a chance to touch on basketball a whole lot yet, Tyler. So we appreciate the basketball crowd for being patient with us, but we promised your time is coming, and we are going to talk a little bit right now about hoops. And I think something that's already stuck out to me just when I was looking at records and everything was kind of the the question popped in my head, like, hey, Metro Nashville football was a much higher level this year. A lot of teams made the playoffs. A lot of teams went deep in the playoffs. Pearl Cone and East Nashville are both in the Blue Cross Bowl. And I'm kind of wondering if the same thing might happen with basketball. And you look at some of these records, Hillsborough sitting there at 7-0 with some big wins over Innsworth, Blackman, Stewart's Creek, Ravenwood. And then another point we've got here too is Hillwood beat Cane Ridge and Pope Prep. They're 6-2 and they're playing 7-1 Antioch on Thursday night. So I'm kind of curious if maybe some new teams are going to emerge this year that we hadn't heard from in a little while.
Yeah, I think Hillsborough is going to be pretty good. In the playoffs last year, they just looked young but super talented. And then, of course, East Nashville brings back a good core. Pearl Cone brings back pretty much all its guys from last year. And then MLK brings back some pieces too. That was a group that made it to a sectional last year. So, yeah, that's a great point. Hillsborough's schedule's been pretty good. I mean, those wins are all solid. You got Thaddeus Johnson averaging 21.2 points per game. Some good talent there. I'd say look out for Rossview, 6-2. Beat Brentwood Academy. A lot of guys right on the cusp of averaging double figures. You got Landon Hankmeyer at 12 points per game, Cam Ward at 11.5. That's a great team. And then kind of on the girls' side, Blackman is just drilling everybody, bringing back its top two scorers and players from last year in Emily Monson and Kaylin Flowers. Flowers at 13.4 points per game, and Monson not too far back, the Purdue signee at 12.7. So the wins early, wins by 20+ points over Cookville, Webb School, Beach, and CPA, all really good wins there.
Wow, the Webb School one surprises me. That team is totally stacked with Division I signees. That's a good win right there. Speaking of Division I signees, over at Good Pasture, Isaiah West, who signed with Vanderbilt, is back in action after his season-ending knee injury last year that basically cost him all of his junior season. And I got to see him play last week against Hunters Lane, and he's kind of doing something a little bit different this year. He's playing point guard, and I understand that Vanderbilt is interested in having him play some point guard when he gets there. So this is great practice for him, and really it fits his skill set because there's sometimes other players on the floor that might be the go-to scorer. But he's just a really great all-around player. He can set other people up. He can rebound. He can play defense. And so having him there at the point kind of allows him to be really in control of what's happening. And he's having a nice season so far. So good to see him back. Good to see basketball back. And I think we're both excited to kind of see how things shake out, especially once January rolls around and we're really all in on hoops coverage by that point.
Yeah, people need to understand how good of a distributor Isaiah West is. Sometimes the numbers don't even show it, Russell. I mean, he's not a double-digit assist guy per game, but the way he runs the floor, or just is kind of the general out there, is really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do us for today on Main Street Preps this week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will be back same time, same place next week here on the show. So we'll see you then.